In the quiet annals of prehistory, a ghost lingers. It is a creature of immense power and primal fear, a predator that once stood at the very pinnacle of a lost world. For an astonishing 10,000 years, this formidable beast held dominion over the vast, untamed landscapes of the Americas. It was an era of giants, a time when the earth trembled under the weight of mammoths and saber-toothed cats. Yet even among these titans, the dire wolf carved out a legacy of unparalleled ferocity. It was significantly larger, demonstrably stronger, and far deadlier than any wolf we know today. This was not merely a wolf, it was the embodiment of the Ice Age's savage heart, an apex predator in its purest and most terrifying form. They were the undisputed masters of their domain. They hunted in formidable packs, their coordinated attacks a symphony of lethal precision that could bring down the most colossal of prey. The very name Canis dirus translates from Latin as fearsome dog, a title earned through countless generations of survival and dominance in a brutal ecosystem. These creatures were a constant presence, a fundamental part of the natural order for millennia. Their reigns seemed eternal, their power absolute. But then, as the great ice sheets began their slow, inexorable retreat and the world warmed to a new dawn, something shifted. The dire wolf, the king of the Pleistocene epoch, simply vanished from the face of the earth. The story of their disappearance is etched into the fossil record, a silent testament to a sudden and catastrophic end. From the tar pits of La Brea in California, to the frozen soils of the Yukon, their bones tell a tale of abundance followed by abrupt absence. They were everywhere, a thriving and successful species that had conquered a continent. And then, in what amounts to a geological blink of an eye, they were gone. The great predator that had defined an entire era was erased, seemingly swept away by the changing tides of a new world. The Ice Age had ended, and with it, the age of the dire wolf came to a close, leaving behind only questions and a profound, echoing silence. This official narrative of extinction, however, is where our story truly begins. It presents a neat, tidy conclusion to the saga of Canis dirus. The world changed and the dire wolf failed to change with it. A simple case of evolution's unforgiving march. But what if that conclusion is not the complete story? What if the vanishing act was not an ending, but a transformation? The legend of the dire wolf is far from dead. It whispers on the winds of desolate prairies and haunts the shadowed depths of ancient forests. The question that hangs in the air, as chilling as an Ice Age winter, is not just how they died, but if they truly died at all. The official story of the dire wolf's demise is one of a perfect storm of environmental pressures. As the Pleistocene epoch waned around 10,000 years ago, the world underwent a dramatic transformation. The great glaciers retreated, altering climates and reshaping entire ecosystems. The colossal megafauna that the dire wolves relied upon for sustenance, the giant ground sloths, the prehistoric horses, the lumbering mammoths, began to die out. With their primary food source dwindling, the specialized, heavy-boned predators faced starvation. This was the first blow in a devastating series of challenges that would ultimately seal their fate, according to the accepted scientific consensus. It was a world in flux, and the dire wolf was on the losing side of history. Compounding this environmental crisis was the arrival of new competition. The smaller, more agile gray wolf, Canis lupus, a more adaptable and generalist predator, thrived in the changing conditions. They could survive on smaller prey and required less food, giving them a crucial advantage in a world of diminishing resources. Simultaneously, a new and uniquely intelligent predator was spreading across the Americas. Humans. With their sophisticated tools and cooperative hunting strategies, early human populations added another layer of competition and threat. Trapped between a collapsing food chain, nimbler rivals, and the rise of humanity, the dire wolf's reign was destined to end. The official narrative is clear: they were outcompeted, starved out, and driven to extinction. This explanation has been the bedrock of paleontological understanding for decades, a closed chapter in the great book of life on Earth. It is a logical and evidence-based conclusion drawn from fossils, climate data, and archaeological findings. But what if the evidence is incomplete? What if the official story overlooks a more complex and unsettling possibility? In the modern era, long after the last dire wolf supposedly drew its final breath, strange stories have begun to surface. From the remote wilderness of North America, persistent tales emerge of encounters with wolves of impossible size and unnerving intelligence, creatures that defy simple classification and hint at something ancient and unknown. The narrative of extinction begins to fray at the edges when confronted with these modern mysteries. A sudden fast glitch in our understanding occurs, like static interrupting a clear broadcast. The image of a fossilized skull in a museum case flickers, replaced for a fleeting moment by a grainy, contemporary image from a forest trail camera. In the darkness of the digital snapshot, a pair of eyes gleam with an eerie, predatory light. The shape is familiar, yet unsettlingly large. It raises a chilling question that challenges everything we thought we knew. If the dire wolf is truly extinct, a relic of a bygone age, then what is this creature that now stalks the shadows of our modern world? To truly understand the legend, we must travel back in time. We must journey to a world colder, harsher, and populated by giants. This was the Pleistocene epoch, the Great Ice Age. It was in this unforgiving crucible that the dire wolf, Canis dirus, was forged. The name itself, a direct translation from Latin, means fearsome dog, and it was a title earned with every hunt and every territorial dispute. For hundreds of thousands of years, these magnificent predators roamed the vast continents of North and, eventually, South America. They were not just a part of the landscape, they were a defining force within it, shaping the very dynamics of life and death alongside other Ice Age titans like the saber-toothed cat, the American lion, and the colossal, short-faced bear. The dire wolf was no mere wolf by another name, it was a beast of a different caliber altogether. Imagine a modern gray wolf, a formidable predator in its own right, and then amplify its most intimidating features. The dire wolf stood taller at the shoulder and was significantly heavier, a dense package of muscle and bone built for power, not for speed. An adult could stretch to 1.5 meters in length and tip the scales at an imposing 68 kilograms, or 150 pounds. This was a creature designed for one primary purpose, to confront and subdue prey much larger than itself. Its very existence was a testament to the brutal demands of its environment, an evolutionary masterpiece of predation. Their dominion was vast, stretching from the frigid plains of what is now Canada, down through the grasslands of the United States, and into the diverse landscapes of South America. This incredible geographic range speaks to their success as a species. They were adaptable enough to thrive in a variety of habitats, from icy tundras to temperate forests and arid scrublands. For millennia, the howl of the dire wolf was a signature sound of the American wilderness, a chilling announcement of the presence of the apex predator. Their fossils have been unearthed in staggering numbers, painting a picture of a creature that was not rare or elusive, but a common and powerful component of the prehistoric ecosystem. The sheer abundance of their remains, particularly at sites like the La Brea tar pits in Los Angeles, provides a unique window into their world. Thousands of individual dire wolf skeletons have been recovered from the sticky asphalt, more than any other large mammal. This fossil trove tells us they were social animals, likely drawn to the tar pits in large numbers by the cries of trapped herbivores, only to become ensnared themselves. It is a grim tableau, but it confirms their pack-hunting nature and their relentless drive to pursue a meal. They were a force of nature, a living, breathing embodiment of the raw power of the Ice Age, a dynasty that seemed destined to last forever. The physical prowess of the dire wolf was nothing short of extraordinary, a perfect suite of adaptations for a life of violent confrontation. Its skeleton was robust, with thicker and heavier bones than any modern wolf, indicating a physique built for grappling with powerful prey. While it may not have possessed the same endurance for long-distance running as its nimbler gray wolf cousins, it excelled in close-quarters combat. Its strength was its greatest weapon, allowing it to wrestle and pin down formidable Ice Age herbivores that would have easily shrugged off a lighter attacker. This was not a predator of finesse and speed, but one of overwhelming brute force tactics that defined its role in the prehistoric food web. Central to its predatory toolkit was its immense bite force. Scientific analysis of the dire wolf's skull and jaw musculature reveals a bite significantly more powerful than that of the modern gray wolf. This wasn't just for delivering a killing blow, it was a specialized tool for a specific purpose: crushing bone. This osteophagic capability allowed the dire wolf to access the rich, calorie-dense marrow inside the skeletons of its kills, ensuring no part of a hard-won meal went to waste. In a world where the next meal was never guaranteed, the ability to shatter the femurs of a bison or a horse was a critical survival advantage, setting it apart from many of its competitors. Their teeth were also larger and more conical than those of gray wolves, better suited for gripping, tearing, and withstanding the immense pressures of their bone-crushing bite. The wear patterns found on fossilized teeth confirm this behavior, showing evidence of heavy use and frequent fracturing consistent with chomping through solid bone. This fearsome dental arsenal, combined with the sheer power of its jaws, made the dire wolf a truly terrifying opponent. A single well-placed bite could cripple its prey, while the pack could then systematically dismantle the carcass, leaving little behind for scavengers. They were the ultimate consumers, masters of processing a kill down to its very marrow. This combination of a robust build, a powerful bite, and specialized teeth paints a clear picture of the dire wolf's ecological niche. It was a hypercarnivore, a specialist hunter of megafauna. It did not chase down rabbits or squirrels. It stood its ground against ancient horses, camels, and the juvenile members of the largest mammal species on the continent. Every aspect of its anatomy, from its broad skull to its stocky legs, was an evolutionary response to the challenge of hunting these Ice Age giants. The dire wolf was a living, breathing juggernaut, a bone-crushing machine perfectly engineered for its time and place in natural history. The dire wolf's true power was unleashed not as an individual, but as a collective. Like modern wolves, they were highly social animals, living and hunting in massive packs that amplified their individual strengths into an unstoppable force. The fossil record, particularly the high concentration of individuals found together, strongly supports this theory of advanced social behavior. A single dire wolf was a formidable opponent, but a pack of 20 or 30 was a veritable army on the prowl, capable of coordinating complex strategies to isolate and overwhelm prey that could weigh well over a ton. Their cooperation was the key to their long and successful reign as apex predators across the Americas. Their primary targets were the large herbivores that defined the Pleistocene megafauna. Imagine the scene, a herd of lumbering western horses or giant ground sloths grazing peacefully on the plains. Suddenly, the pack emerges, a wave of dark fur and relentless determination. They would employ sophisticated tactics, with some members working to panic and scatter the herd, while others focused on singling out a weaker, younger, or older individual. This was a calculated, intelligent assault. The chase would be short and explosive, a burst of power designed to close the distance quickly and initiate a brutal, close-range battle, where the dire wolf's strength and numbers would ultimately prevail. The hunt was a symphony of savage efficiency. Once a target was selected and cornered, the pack would swarm it, their powerful jaws latching on, tearing at flesh and hamstringing the animal to bring it to the ground. Their bone-crushing bites would not only inflict grievous wounds, but could also shatter limbs, immobilizing the struggling prey. It was a grim and violent spectacle, but it was the reality of survival in the Ice Age. The dire wolves were not cruel, they were supremely effective. Their ability to work as a cohesive unit allowed them to dominate much larger and more powerful animals, securing the massive amounts of food necessary to sustain the pack. This strategy of pack hunting allowed them to thrive for an astonishing period. For up to 9 years, the average lifespan of a dire wolf, they would have participated in countless such hunts, learning and perfecting their role within the pack's social structure. They were the undisputed kings of the Pleistocene hunt, a perfectly tuned predatory machine that sat comfortably at the top of the food chain. Their existence exerted immense pressure on the herbivore populations, shaping the evolution and behavior of the animals they preyed upon. For millennia, the dire wolf was not just a hunter, it was a fundamental force of nature, the living embodiment of the predator-prey dynamic in a lost world. The reign of the dire wolf, a dynasty that had lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, was not brought down by a single catastrophic event. Instead, it was a slow, creeping demise, a war of attrition waged by the planet itself. The official scientific story begins with the end of the last ice age, around 13,000 years ago. The world began to warm in a period known as the Late Pleistocene. The colossal ice sheets that had blanketed much of North America started a magnificent and inexorable retreat. As the glaciers receded, they unleashed torrents of meltwater, carving new rivers, filling vast lakes, and fundamentally reshaping the very geography of the continent. This was not just a change in temperature, it was the complete rewriting of the world the dire wolf had known. This period of global warming, known as the Quaternary Extinction Event, triggered profound ecological shifts. The cold, dry steppe tundras, the preferred habitat of many megafauna, gave way to expanding temperate forests and grasslands. The plant life changed, which in turn altered the distribution and availability of the large herbivores that the dire wolves depended on. The stable, predictable environment that had allowed such a specialized predator to thrive for so long was becoming volatile and unreliable. The dire wolf was a creature perfectly adapted to a specific world, and that world was now vanishing before its very eyes, melting away with the last of the great glaciers. It was the first devastating blow from which the species would never recover. The climate change was not a smooth, gradual transition. It was punctuated by abrupt and chaotic fluctuations, including rapid warming spells and sudden cold snaps like the Younger Dryas period. This climatic instability placed immense stress on all life, but it was particularly hard on specialists like the dire wolf. Generalist species, those that could adapt to a wider range of conditions and food sources, were better equipped to weather the storm. The dire wolf, with its heavy build and reliance on large prey, was a specialist of the highest order. Its evolutionary advantages in the old world were rapidly becoming liabilities in the new one. The very foundations of its existence were crumbling. The official story, therefore, is one of an animal trapped by its own success. For millennia, its powerful build and bone-crushing bite made it the undisputed king. But when the environment that favored these traits disappeared, the dire wolf had no evolutionary path to follow. It was too specialized, too locked into its role as a megafauna hunter. The Great Thaw was more than just a warming trend, it was an extinction trigger. It set in motion a domino effect that would ripple through the entire ecosystem, pushing the magnificent Canis dirus ever closer to the edge of oblivion. The stage was set for a final tragic act in the dire wolf's long history. The most direct consequence of the changing climate was the catastrophic collapse of the dire wolf's food supply. As the ecosystems transformed, the great beasts of the Ice Age began to disappear. The dire wolf's primary menu items, the western horse, the ancient bison, the giant ground sloth, and even juvenile mammoths and mastodons, were all marching towards extinction. These large, slow-moving herbivores, the very animals the dire wolf's robust body and powerful bite were designed to hunt, were vanishing. The vast herds that had once supported massive packs of predators were thinning out, leaving behind a barren and empty landscape. The king was losing its kingdom, one subject at a time. This loss of prey created a devastating bottleneck. A 150-pound dire wolf required a substantial amount of meat to survive, and a pack of 30 would need to make frequent large kills. When the giant herbivores disappeared, they were replaced by smaller, swifter animals like deer and elk. These creatures were not ideal prey for the dire wolf. Its heavy, powerful frame was built for wrestling, not for the long, agile chases required to catch these nimbler animals. Suddenly, the dire wolf's greatest strengths, its size and power, became significant disadvantages. It was like a heavyweight boxer being asked to compete in a marathon. It was simply not built for the task at hand. The result was widespread starvation. Fossil evidence from the La Brea tar pits supports this grim scenario. Analysis of dire wolf bones from the later periods shows an increased frequency of fractures and other signs of stress, suggesting the animals were taking greater risks for smaller rewards. They were likely becoming more desperate, engaging in more dangerous hunts or fighting more fiercely with each other over dwindling resources. The once mighty packs, the source of their power, would have begun to fracture under the strain of hunger. The social fabric that had held their society together for eons was unraveling in the face of an empty larder. This is a classic tale of specialist extinction. The dire wolf was a hypercarnivore, finely tuned to a specific ecological niche. Unlike a generalist predator that could switch to eating smaller animals, birds, or even plants when times were tough, the dire wolf had no plan B. Its entire evolutionary history had been a bet on the continued existence of megafauna. When that bet failed, the dire wolf had no other cards to play. The official story paints a tragic picture of a fearsome predator, a master of the hunt, ultimately succumbing to the slow, agonizing pangs of starvation as its world and its food vanished forever. As the dire wolf's world crumbled, another canid was on the rise. The gray wolf, known as Canis lupus, was a more recent arrival to the Americas, having crossed the Bering Land Bridge from Eurasia. It was, a different kind of wolf altogether. Smaller, lighter, and far more adaptable. While the dire wolf was a specialist powerhouse, the gray wolf was a versatile generalist. It possessed longer legs relative to its body size, making it a more efficient long-distance runner. It could thrive on a much more varied diet, capable of hunting the smaller deer and elk that were flourishing in the new forests, but also content to scavenge or hunt rodents and rabbits when necessary. This adaptability was honestly its ultimate weapon. The two species had coexisted for thousands of years, but the changing environment dramatically tilted the competitive balance. In the Ice Age, the dire wolf was the clear victor, its size and strength allowing it to dominate the landscape and its larger kills. The gray wolf likely occupied a secondary niche, scavenging from dire wolf kills or sticking to smaller prey. But as the megafauna died out and the forests expanded, the tables turned. The gray wolf's lighter frame and greater stamina made it the superior hunter in this new world. It could pursue nimbler prey over greater distances, a feat the bulkier dire wolf could not match. The competition for the remaining food sources intensified, and the gray wolf had the clear advantage. Every deer a gray wolf pack killed was a meal a struggling dire wolf pack could not have. The competition was fierce and direct. In any confrontation over a carcass, a single dire wolf might have been able to intimidate a single gray wolf, but the dynamics of pack-on-pack conflict in an era of scarcity would have been brutal. The more efficient hunting strategy of the gray wolves meant their packs were likely better fed, healthier, and able to sustain larger populations. They simply outbred and outhunted their larger, more specialized cousins. The dire wolf was being systematically squeezed out of its own ancestral lands by a more flexible and opportunistic rival. This process, known as competitive exclusion, is a fundamental principle in ecology. When two species compete for the same limited resources, the one with even a slight advantage will eventually drive the other to extinction. The gray wolf's generalist nature was the decisive advantage. It was better suited to the new climate, the new terrain, and the new prey. For the dire wolf, this was the second major blow in the perfect storm of its extinction. Hemmed in by a changing climate and a dwindling food supply, it now faced an existential threat from a more successful competitor. The official story sees the rise of the gray wolf as the nail in the coffin for the age of Canis Dirus. The final element in the trifecta of extinction, according to the official scientific story, was the arrival and proliferation of a new and unprecedentedly intelligent predator, Homo sapiens. Early humans spread across the Americas at the end of the Pleistocene, armed with sophisticated stone tools, projectile weapons like the atlatl, and complex cooperative hunting strategies. They were not just another competitor, they were a force of nature unlike anything the dire wolf had ever encountered. These newcomers were omnivores, highly adaptable and capable of targeting the same prey animals that both the dire wolves and gray wolves relied upon for survival. Their arrival added a fatal new layer of pressure to an already stressed ecosystem. Humans were direct competitors for food. With their advanced hunting techniques, they were incredibly effective at taking down large game. A successful human hunt not only removed a potential meal from the ecosystem, but also did so with lethal efficiency. Furthermore, humans were not just competitors, they were also a potential threat. While a direct confrontation between a human and a dire wolf was likely rare, conflict over kills would have been inevitable. A pack of dire wolves attempting to scavenge a human-killed mammoth would have been met not with teeth and claws, but with fire and sharpened spears, a type of defense they had no evolutionary preparation for. More importantly, humans likely had an indirect but devastating impact by competing more successfully with the dire wolves' prey. As human populations grew, they would have placed enormous pressure on the remaining herds of bison, horses, and other herbivores. This blitzkrieg or overkill hypothesis suggests that human hunting was a primary driver of the megafauna extinction itself. By contributing to the rapid decline of the dire wolf's food source, humans effectively accelerated the process of starvation that was already underway. They were not just competing with the dire wolves, they were actively dismantling their entire food web from the bottom up. This triple threat, climate change, competition from gray wolves, and the arrival of humans, created a fatal synergy. The dire wolf was being attacked on all fronts. Its habitat was changing, its food was disappearing, a more adaptable rival was taking over, and a new super predator was rewriting the rules of the hunt. According to the scientific consensus, there was no escape. The dire wolf, for all its power and fearsome reputation, was simply overwhelmed. It was a victim of a changing world, a titan from a bygone era that could not find a place in the new one. This is the official accepted story of how the mighty Canis Dirus vanished from the world, leaving only its bones and its legend behind. For over a century, the story of the dire wolf seemed settled. It was the bigger, tougher, Ice Age version of the gray wolf, a close cousin that simply grew larger to hunt bigger prey. This narrative was built on solid ground, or so it seemed. The physical evidence was undeniable. Their skeletons looked remarkably like those of wolves, just scaled up and more robust. Paleontologists classified them within the same genus, Canis, and the story of a bigger, now extinct wolf became scientific dogma. It was a tale of convergent evolution at its finest, or so we thought. But in 2021, this entire foundation of understanding was shattered by a team of scientists armed with technology beyond the wildest dreams of the early fossil hunters. They were about to decode a message hidden for over 50,000 years. A groundbreaking study managed to do what was once considered impossible. They successfully extracted and sequenced ancient DNA from the fossilized bones of 5 dire wolves. These weren't just any fossils, they were specimens spanning a vast timeline, from 13,000 to more than 50,000 years ago. This genetic material, preserved against all odds, held the key to unlocking the dire wolf's true identity. The researchers compared this ancient genetic code to the DNA of modern canids, including gray wolves, coyotes, and African wild dogs. The expectation was clear. The results would confirm the dire wolf's place firmly within the wolf family tree, perhaps as a sister species to the gray wolf. But science often delivers the most profound truths through the most unexpected results. The findings were not just surprising, they were revolutionary. The dire wolf was not a wolf at all. Genetically, they were a world apart. The data revealed that the dire wolf lineage had split from the ancestor of all living wolf-like canids nearly 6 million years ago. This was, honestly, an astonishing revelation. It meant that dire wolves were not just a separate species, they were members of an entirely different ancient canine lineage that had evolved exclusively in the Americas, in complete isolation. The striking physical resemblance to gray wolves was not a sign of a close relationship but rather a spectacular case of convergent evolution, where two distantly related species independently evolved similar traits to adapt to similar ecological roles. This genetic bombshell completely rewrote the book on Canis dirus. The fearsome predator of the Ice Age was not a souped-up gray wolf, but the last surviving member of a ghost lineage, a branch of the canid family tree long thought to be extinct. It meant that for hundreds of thousands of years, two profoundly different types of wolf had hunted across the North American continent, looking alike but being as genetically distinct as humans are from chimpanzees. The official story, accepted for over 150 years, was not just wrong, it was fundamentally mistaken. The dire wolf was something far older, far more mysterious, and far more unique than anyone had ever imagined. Dire wolves weren't just big wolves, they were the last of a unique American lineage, evolving in isolation for millions of years. Despite sharing territory with gray wolves, dire wolves never interbred with them, a rare barrier among canids. This genetic divide meant dire wolves couldn't adapt by sharing genes, leaving them vulnerable as the Ice Age ended. Their splendid isolation, once their strength, became their downfall. The dire wolf's extinction wasn't just the end of a species, but the end of an entire evolutionary dynasty. Their DNA reveals a hidden world of ancient separations, reminding us that extinction can erase not just animals, but whole lineages. The Pleistocene wasn't ruled by one wolf, but by two, the native dire wolf and the immigrant gray wolf. Dire wolves were powerful specialists, kings of the Ice Age. Gray wolves were adaptable newcomers. Though they looked alike, their genetics told different stories, one isolated, one flexible. When the world changed, only the adaptable survived. The dire wolf's extinction was the end of an ancient American story. The gray wolf's survival began a new era. The DNA twist transforms this into a grand, tragic epic: two canids, one world, only one survivor. Science says the dire wolf vanished 10,000 years ago, but legends persist. Across North America, people report seeing massive dark-furred wolves, creatures that don't fit any known species. These aren't just stories, they're detailed, consistent encounters from remote wilderness. Witnesses describe animals with immense size, powerful builds, and an unsettling intelligence. Are these misidentified wolves, hybrids, or something more? The official story says extinction, but the whispers suggest a ghost may still roam the wild. The legend of the Shunkawarakin blurs the line between myth and reality. In 1886, a strange wolf-like beast was killed in Montana. Its body, the ringdocus, defied classification. DNA tests revealed wolf ancestry, but with unusual markers, deepening the mystery. Could it be a relic of the dire wolf's lineage or a hybrid carrying ancient genes? The ringdocus proves that large, unclassified canids existed in modern times. Perhaps the dire wolf's legacy lingers, hidden in hybrids or isolated survivors. When you map the sightings and legends, a pattern emerges. Giant wolves reported in North America's wildest places. These creatures are bold, powerfully built, and behave unlike any known wolf. Witnesses describe broader chests, thicker necks, and deep, resonant howls, traits matching dire wolf fossils. The consistency of these reports suggests more than coincidence. While science demands hard proof, the pattern hints that the dire wolf's ghost lineage may still survive, hidden in the continent's deepest shadows. Perhaps extinction isn't the end, but a story still unfolding in the wilderness. In an age where genetic science holds the power to resurrect the past, the line between fact and fiction has become, honestly, increasingly blurred. The story of the dire wolf takes a sharp, conspiratorial turn in this modern landscape, moving from the realm of paleontology and cryptozoology into the shadowy world of corporate biotech and clandestine operations. The central mystery begins in 2017, when a little-known and highly secretive biotech startup, operating under the generic name North American Genomic Research, quietly filed a series of permit applications. Their stated goal was ambitious and highly specific: to acquire and fully sequence the ancient DNA of Canis dirus from multiple high-quality fossil specimens. This was not just an academic exercise. The language in their filings hinted at applied biological revival. For 3 years, the company operated in near-total obscurity. They maintained no public website, had no press releases, and their corporate officers were listed through anonymous shell corporations, making them virtually untraceable. They successfully acquired the genetic material they sought, leveraging private funding to bypass the slower, more transparent channels of academic research. They were building a complete genetic blueprint of an extinct apex predator, a creature that had been gone for 10,000 years. The sheer cost and secrecy surrounding the project raised immediate red flags for the few industry watchdogs who caught wind of it. What was the ultimate purpose of resurrecting the dire wolf's genome? The potential applications were as vast as they were terrifying. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the company vanished. In late 2020, North American Genomic Research was officially dissolved. Their digital footprint was systematically erased, servers were wiped, public records were scrubbed, and the scientists involved seemed to disappear from the professional world, their online profiles and publication histories deleted. It was a digital ghosting on a corporate scale, an act of deliberate and thorough self-erasure that suggested they had something significant to hide. The project, which had been on the cusp of unlocking the full genetic code of Canis dirus, was now officially non-existent. The logical question that followed was not if they had succeeded, but why they were so desperate to conceal their success. The conspiracy theory that emerged from the ashes of the vanished company is as compelling as it is disturbing. The theory posits that the sequencing was successful, and the project moved into a new, far more dangerous phase: cloning. Some believe the dire wolf was brought back to life, not as a scientific marvel for a museum park, but as a prototype for a new kind of biological weapon. A creature with the dire wolf's size, power, and pack-hunting instincts, enhanced with modern genetic engineering, would be an unparalleled asset in asymmetrical warfare. The company didn't just disappear, it was likely absorbed into a deeper, darker, black-budget military project, taking its living, breathing creations with it into the shadows. The disappearance of the biotech company is where the trail goes cold for public records. But it is where the human whispers begin. The most chilling testimony comes from an anonymous source, a man claiming to have worked as a security contractor at a remote, undisclosed facility in the Nevada desert. In a voice-modulated interview given to an online investigative journalist, he described a high-security compound with deep underground levels. His job was to patrol the perimeters and ensure no one got in or out without authorization. He was told it was an advanced aeronautics research facility, a common cover for such black sites. But the sounds he heard at night told a different story. He spoke of sounds that were not mechanical or human. They were guttural, primal howls and snarls that echoed from the subterranean levels of the base, sounds that carried a weight and power he had never heard from any known animal. He described the immense amounts of raw meat that were delivered to the facility on a weekly basis, far more than would be needed to feed any normal security dogs. The official explanation was that they were for large, exotic guard dogs, but the secrecy and the sheer volume of the deliveries suggested something else entirely. He was strictly forbidden from ever accessing the lower levels, his clearance ending at the reinforced blast doors that led deep underground. His story takes its most terrifying turn when he recounts a containment breach. One night, alarms blared, and the entire facility went into lockdown. Over the internal comms, he heard panicked shouts about assets being loose in Sector Gamma. Through a security feed monitor just before it was cut, he caught a glimpse of what was loose. It was not a dog, and it was certainly not a normal wolf. It was massive, dark-furred, and moved with a terrifying combination of speed and power. He described its eyes as having a cold, yellow intelligence. He was certain of one thing: the creatures being held in those cages were not extinct. They were alive, they were powerful, and they were dangerous. This anonymous testimony, while unverifiable, aligns perfectly with the theory of a weaponized cloning program. It provides a potential location for where the work of North American genomic research continued after the company officially ceased to exist. The theory suggests these cloned dire wolves, perhaps genetically tweaked for heightened aggression and resilience, are being bred and trained in secret. Are the modern sightings of giant wolves not relic populations but escapees from these black sites? Has a secret project to resurrect a monster from the Ice Age accidentally unleashed it back into the modern world? The conspiracy suggests the dire wolf is not just back, it has been weaponized and control has already been lost. We stand at a crossroads of scientific fact and persistent, unsettling mystery. The official epitaph of the dire wolf, Canis dirus, was written long ago, carved into the fossil record and sealed by genetic data. The story tells us that this ancient American predator, the last of a ghost lineage, succumbed to a perfect storm of climate change, starvation, and competition around 10,000 years ago. It was a specialist that could not adapt, a titan from a bygone era that had no place in the modern world. For all intents and purposes, its chapter in the Great Book of Life is closed, its formidable reign confined to the distant past. This is the world as science understands it. A world where the dire wolf is nothing more than a memory preserved in stone and tar. And yet, the legend refuses to die. It breathes in the whispers from the deep wilderness, in the accounts of hunters and hikers who have seen something that does not belong. It lives in the unnerving stare of an animal too big, too bold and too intelligent to be a common gray wolf. The sightings, the strange tracks, and the deep, resonant howls that echo through remote valleys all suggest that the story is not over. The groundbreaking DNA evidence that proved the dire wolf was not a true wolf at all only deepens the enigma. It revealed a creature far more unique and isolated than we ever imagined, making its potential survival an even more profound possibility. The anomalies in the narrative are too numerous to simply ignore. Then there are the darker, more modern threads of conspiracy. The tales of vanished biotech firms and secret military projects add a chilling new dimension to the puzzle. Could the dire wolves stalking the shadows of today be not ancient survivors but resurrected clones, the product of human hubris unleashed from a clandestine laboratory? Whether through natural survival against impossible odds, secret evolution in the planet's hidden corners, or a technological resurrection, the question remains the same: is Canis dirus truly gone? The evidence, both anecdotal and conspiratorial, suggests that the official story of extinction might be the greatest fiction of all. Ultimately, the saga of the dire wolf remains tantalizingly unsolved. It is a creature that exists in the twilight space between confirmed extinction and credible legend. The sightings persist, the genetic mysteries linger, and the chilling possibility of a cloned and weaponized predator haunts the edges of our technological age. Perhaps the dire wolf never truly went extinct. Perhaps it simply retreated, adapted, or was reborn, waiting just beyond the veil of our understanding. As we peer into the shadows of the deep woods, we are left to wonder. The legend lives on, a formidable ghost of the Ice Age, perhaps waiting for the right moment to step back into the light and reclaim its throne.